am live. Just going to give everybody a couple minutes to come on. I'm a little late, about 5 minutes late, but I'm here. And what we're going to be talking about today is fibromyalgia. And I'm discussing this topic because of some interest that was shown yesterday and some comments that were posted. So this is what everyone wanted to talk about today. That's what we'll talk about. All right, so I just make sure I got everything together. I got a few items that I want to show you that I use personally, and a couple of things that I created myself. And I'm going to share with you. I have a list of things that I want to talk about, from the fibro symptoms that each person may have to different things that might trigger fibro attack, that sort of thing. Herbal remedies, essential oil remedies, different foods that may help, exercise, some unconventional methods that you may want to try. And then I'm also going to share with you things that I think you should avoid if you want to try to keep fibro flare-ups at bay. And I'll also share with you a couple places that you can go to online that you can purchase the different herbs or essential oils that I'm going to share with you. So I made a bunch of notes. So I got them here because I wanted to make sure that, I'm speaking a little bit from experience, because I've gone through this as well, the whole fibro flare-ups and just widespread pain, that sort of thing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what some of the fibro symptoms might be. And before I start, let me put this out there. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not going to speak from the points of a medical doctor. I'm going to let you know what I have been through personally. I will share with you things that I've tried personally that have helped me. If you have never tried any kind of herbal remedies, please don't try anything unless especially if you're on some kind of pharmaceutical medication. Please don't try anything new until you've consulted your doctor, because just because it's an herbal remedy does not necessarily mean that it cannot interact with a pharmaceutical. So you want to make sure that you're safe on all levels. So make sure that you do discuss adding any kind of herbal remedies or natural remedies to your particular, protocol or that you might be working with. So do consult a doctor. I'm not going to be speaking from a medical perspective because, like I said, I'm not a medical doctor. I am an herbalist. I am an aromatherapy consultant. I do know those particular fields, so I will speak from that perspective. I will not go into a whole lot of detail as far as the particular benefits of all of the herbs, because we could be here forever if I were to discuss every single herb in all the detail and all its glory that I can. So what I will say here is that if you are interested in particular herbs that you hear me mention, and you do want me to speak a little bit more on those, then we can certainly create another video, or I can come on live and talk about those. If you're just coming in, please go ahead and just say hello. What we're talking about today is fibromyalgia. That was the suggested topic from those who were viewing yesterday. So we'll talk about those. And I just mentioned that I'm not a medical doctor. I'm an herbalist. I'm an aromatherapy consultant. So I will speak from those particular grounds. All right. So the other thing is every person is different. So just because someone has been diagnosed with fibromyalgia doesn't necessarily mean that the next person who has also been diagnosed with fibro is going to have the exact same symptoms. And that's the catch-22 with fibro, is that the symptoms can range so greatly. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's always so hard to diagnose, or why a lot of people who are experiencing this tend to go through long periods of, being sent from to one doctor and another, simply because none of the doctors really know what's going on. So that's one of the reasons I think why this particular term, I think, was just kind of coined as a kind of a catch-all, almost along the lines of the chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, because chronic fatigue syndrome is one of the symptoms that a lot of people with fibro tend to experience as well. Okay, so the main symptom is widespread pain. Could be widespread muscle pain and tenderness throughout your body, or it could be localized to certain areas of your body. The pain tends to get worse at night, and that was one of the things with me, was most of the pain as the day went by and it got later, that's when the pain would get worse, especially when you're starting to relax and get ready for bed. I think because you're kind of relaxing and kind of winding down, you start to pay more attention to what's going on in your body. I think that's a reason. I could be wrong, but I think that's one of the reasons why the pain tends to get a little bit worse during the night. I mentioned just now that chronic fatigue is one of the symptoms that a lot of the people who have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia tend to experience. Other symptoms include muscle spasms, and this was a huge one for me, and I did not even realize that I was actually experiencing them until I went to my primary doctor one day, and she started checking me for it's just a general checkup, and she touched my back and held her hand there for the longest time, and then she looked at me. She said, aren't you feeling those? I said, well, not really, just kind of felt like jumpy almost. And she said basically that all of the muscles in my back were just spazzing, and I'd never heard a doctor use that term until then, but she said that my back muscles were just spazzing out. And so muscle spasms is definitely one that a lot of people with fibro tend to experience. I also had it in my fingers, where I would have tremors. There are none right now, and I haven't had them in years, but what would happen was my hand would shake. My fingers would just literally a tremor would occur, and whenever I had to go to the doctor to have it checked, they would never happen. And he basically kind of looked at me and said I was making this stuff up. But what I did one day was, as it was occurring, I took my phone camera and I recorded it, and went to the doctor. Of course, it didn't occur there in the office, but by having the video, that was proof that something was going on. So muscle spasms is another symptom that I know a lot of people, myself included, have experienced. Other symptoms include gastrointestinal issues. So if you've had things like IBS, gastroparesis is one particular symptom, but that's possibly a whole other illness on its own. But if you have gastrointestinal issues, that could also be a sign that you're having fibromyalgia problems. Or if they're having trouble trying to find out what's going on with you, it's possible that you could be experiencing fibromyalgia concerns. So those gastro issues could include constipation, could include nausea, excess gassiness. So all of these things are possible symptoms of fibro. Other issues include anxiety, mood swings, nervousness, forgetfulness, lack of concentration. These are all signs of or all symptoms of fibro. Other ones include, and these could also tie in with neuropathy, because there's a lot of symptoms. I know when I was diagnosed with neuropathy, there were a lot of overlying symptoms with fibro and neuropathy. So I had a lot of tingling in my hands and my feet. I had a lot of coldness in my hands. But it also occurred if you've been diagnosed with neuropathy. These are also a couple symptoms that you might experience with that as well. Pins and needles, that sensation of having pins and needles going through your feet or going through your fingers, those are also symptoms of fibromyalgia. You might experience sleep issues and sleep disturbances, especially when the fibromyalgia symptoms tend to get worse during the as it gets later in the evening. Then it might interfere with your ability to sleep. Depression, that's a huge one, because one of the things with fibro is it's so hard to diagnose. And like I said earlier, I'm not going to speak from a medical perspective, but I'm going to tell you what I went through before I was actually given that diagnosis. And I think that was the first diagnosis that I received before I received the neuropathy diagnosis, and then that eventually led up to a lupus diagnosis when they found out exactly what was happening. But it's so hard to diagnose fibromyalgia, and I think that's why a lot of people end up getting the chronic. Hi, Rosanna, it's good to see you. I think that's why a lot of people end up getting the chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis as well, because it is so hard to diagnose. And like I said, I think fibro and the chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS for short, is kind of like the catch-all. When they can't figure out exactly what's going on with you, then that's one of two diagnoses that you might receive, right? So as far as with depression, I think the depression comes because none of the doctors really understand what's going on. So the person who is fighting all of this pain and trying to find out what's going on get plunged into depression, and then that becomes a whole other diagnosis, having to go to the psychiatrist, simply because the doctors can't figure out what's wrong with you. So depression is also one of the a huge symptom that fibromyalgia sufferers have to deal with. Headaches is another one. One of the types of headaches that I experience occasionally, I still get them periodically, but I think my last one was maybe 8 months ago. They're called ice pick headaches, where they come on suddenly, last for about 10 seconds. It feels like someone is using an ice pick in your head, and then it goes away. And I literally scream and cry for the entire time that it's happening, because there's nothing that can be done. And that's because I never know when it's going to happen, and I don't know how long it's going to last, and I don't know when it's going to end. So the doctors can't give you anything for it. I can only, by using the different essential oils that I work with on a daily basis, it helps. I think that has helped to alleviate the distance between them, because I was actually getting them maybe 6 a month, and now it's only been maybe 1 for the last 8 months. Okay, so headaches, migraines, that's a common symptom for that fibromyalgia sufferers have to deal with. Joint stiffness is another. Muscle twitches, and I talked about that a little bit ago. So if you find yourself experiencing, I think especially at night, you might get, I think they call it restless leg. A lot of people just assume it's just restless leg syndrome, but it might actually be related to fibromyalgia. So you might want to get it checked out if you're having a lot of muscle twitching, especially when it comes to the late evening and nighttime when you're trying to sleep. I do want to say, and I said it before, symptoms are different for each person. I've listed quite a few, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to experience every single one of these, because I certainly didn't go through every single one. But these are common symptoms that people who've been diagnosed with fibro experience. And I went through and shared the ones that were typical for me. So if I mention something that you haven't experienced, it doesn't necessarily mean that your diagnosis is incorrect. It just means that it's not a symptom that you've experienced, but it might be something that somebody else has experienced. All right, so what I want to do here is I want to talk a little bit about possible triggers for fibro flare-ups, or for actually triggering fibro itself, because you might not necessarily have, how do I put this? let me talk about different things that I think might actually trigger the dis-ease in the body that leads to the fibromyalgia diagnosis. I think that's the best way to put it. So, possible triggers could include, there could be trauma, and trauma could be either physical or it could be psychological. With the physical, it could be a particular accident that you might have been involved in. I know people who have had car accidents and they've come out of it, and after thinking that they're healed, then start to experience widespread pain throughout the body, and it turns out to be fibromyalgia. I'm not going to go into detail as far as the particular part of the body that's usually associated with fibromyalgia is the central nervous system. And I'm going to let you go down that rabbit hole by yourself, because I could spend a lot of time talking about that on its own. So to avoid having to be here for an extended time, I'm just going to let you do a lot of research on that fibromyalgia and the central nervous system, as well as the autonomic nervous system. So it will help a little bit more in understanding the possible triggers as far as fibromyalgia is concerned, and not just for fibromyalgia, but for disease or dis-ease in the body in general. All right, so physical could be an accident, or it could be some other act that was done to you. I know for me, one of my triggers was when a knife was actually put to my throat, and that I'm going to tie that in with the other possible trauma, which is psychological, because what I found out was that I was trying to heal the physical part, the actual act that was done. I was trying to forget about that, and not realizing that there was a huge connection between the physical act as well as the psychological. So it took me several years to actually heal from the physical act and the psychological effects that it had on me. So if you've had something that's happened to you, try not to just forget about it, because I think trying to forget about it is just basically shoving it in the back of your head, but you haven't really dealt with the psychological trauma that came as a result of it. So for trauma, those triggers could be physical, could be psychological, it could be a combination of both. So make sure that you're actually working to heal from both of them. Other triggers can include temperature and weather changes. And when I was first diagnosed, and if you have questions as I'm going through this, please just pop them in the comment section, and I'm going to try to answer them as I go through, or I will wait until the end of the live and I'll take the questions down and I will answer them in another live. That might be easier, because I do have quite a few things I want to go through, but if something pops up, I will certainly stop and I will try to answer that right here. Okay, so temperature and weather changes. When I was first diagnosed with lupus, I noticed that as it got colder, my joints would ache a lot. I noticed that if it rained, my joints, I could actually tell when it was going to rain, because my joints would start to hurt, and I could always sort of predict a rainstorm coming, or predict showers of rain coming either within the next few hours or within the next day, simply because I was like a walking barometer. And I'm sure that a lot of you who've been diagnosed with either fibro, chronic fatigue, lupus, and other autoimmune issues can relate to that. So temperature and weather changes can definitely be a trigger for the fibro to kind of flare up, or for if you've never had or been diagnosed with it, it can actually get that started. Because the thing is, with these kind of conditions, we tend to think that it just suddenly happened, but it doesn't come on suddenly. It's something that's been kind of building up in your body based on something that occurred, and then your body kind of takes it on, and instead of, because you haven't healed from it or you haven't done anything to kind of work through it, it builds up in your body, and accumulates in there, and then after a while we see this, sickness start to happen. And it didn't just happen, even though it might have felt that way. So we have to be able to figure out where the triggers are and what your particular triggers are, because again, every fibro patient is different, and every trigger is different for different people, for the different people who have been diagnosed, right? So temperature and weather changes, I know, is a common one for a lot of people who've been diagnosed with any kind of autoimmune issue, or especially things like lupus, fibro, chronic fatigue. All right, hormonal changes is another one. If you're older and you've gone through maybe you've gone through menopause as a woman, maybe you're an older guy and certain hormone levels might have dropped. That can also trigger fibro flare-ups or trigger fibro symptoms in your body. So if you do experience any kind of sudden changes happening in your body, you might want to get those checked, because it could be, especially if you're older, could be hormonal changes. And if you're a woman and you're going through maybe every month, if you're still having a cycle, sometimes having really, really heavy cycles can also trigger fibro. So and the other thing is, another possible trigger is schedule changes. If you're used to having things done at a certain time, having your schedule suddenly change can also trigger fibro flare-up. And right now, with everything that's going on, I've seen a lot of people who've contacted me saying this is probably the worst that they've felt, because yes, they're at home usually, but with everything that's going on, the added trigger of I can't go outside, I have this particular concern, and my immune system is lower, so I have to plan really carefully when I go to the grocery store, because I can't be around a ton of people. It's just, you can see that thing just snowballing, right? So all of this, the schedule changes for people who've been diagnosed with any kind of chronic illness, is certainly a huge trigger right now. So one of the ways that I can say, yes, it certainly does manifest itself with all of these different triggers. So one of the things I would suggest is, if you absolutely don't want to leave the house to go grocery shopping, have somebody do it for you. There are a lot of delivery companies. A lot of the grocery stores do have delivery. So, or if you have a close friend who doesn't mind doing the grocery shopping for you, if you don't want to come into contact with that person, have them get the groceries, set it on your doorstep, let them leave. You get them, you do all of the cleaning up that you need to do, put your groceries away. There are ways around it. You just have to kind of work with a few people. Don't try to do it by yourself. And certainly reach out to people if you are feeling, if you're going through any kind of changes right now, especially if you're alone and you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness. Don't try to go through this alone. Reach out to other people. Make sure you do have connections, right? Another possible trigger is diet. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Diet and poor sleep. Poor sleep is huge. If you do not get enough sleep, and it doesn't matter whether you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness like fibro, lupus, or any other illness, sleep is important, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So those are a few triggers for fibromyalgia. So I'm going to put that to the side. All right, so what I'm going to talk about now are a few herbs, essential oils, foods, exercise, all of those things that can possibly help with the fibromyalgia symptoms that you might be experiencing. So, and I have a lot of notes. All right, so let's talk about a few herbs that might possibly help. Rosemary, I'm going to list a few, and then I'll talk about some of the benefits. Okay, so there's rosemary, stinging nettle, lemon balm, passion flower, gotu kola, reishi mushroom, and you're going to love that one. So let me stop right there, and I'm going to go back and tell you what those particular ones, what the benefits of those are. If you know about rosemary, you know that rosemary is called the herb of remembrance. But not too many people know that rosemary is absolutely really good for pain. Pretty much any kind of pain. So one of the things that I've done is I use rosemary, stinging nettle in an Epsom salt bath, mix that all together, and I soak in it. Stinging nettle I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but the stinging nettle with rosemary and Epsom salts, I put that into my tub and as hot water as I can possibly handle, and I just soak in that for about 30 to 45 minutes as the water starts to cool, and then I would get up. So another one is you could also do a foot soak with the Epsom salts, the same blend I just mentioned, Epsom salt, rosemary, and stinging nettles. If you cannot do the full body soak, then just simply put it into a container with hot water, place your feet in there, and then just do your soak that way, because the idea is to absorb the magnesium from the Epsom salts, and you'll also get the benefits of the stinging nettles and the rosemary from there as well. Magnesium is huge when it comes to illnesses like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, lupus, those type of things. Magnesium is very important, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. So I want to make sure I have so many notes. I want to make sure I'm keeping everything together. And I'm going to also share with you a few items that I've created over time. All right, so lemon balm. Lemon balm is it's a nervine. It's considered one of the nervine herbs, and that word nervine, you can see the word nerve in front of it, so you know that it's going to be very good for your nervous system. It's very, very calming, and I'm going to share with you a tea blend that I have the lemon balm in as well. Passion flower is also considered to be a nervine, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on passion flower. It's sedating, but not so sedating that you can't function throughout the day. And it's a good combination of lemon balm and passion flower. That tea at the end of the day is amazing. So, and I'm also going to give you sites where you can go and purchase these if you do want to go a little further rather than just listening to me. If you want to purchase the items, I'm going to give you a few sites, reputable sites that you can go and purchase these items. Gotu kola is also another really good one that is also good for pain. Reishi mushroom, like I mentioned, is called the mushroom of longevity, and it's great for, what isn't it good for? It's great for pain. It's great for your memory. It's great for a lot of things. So I could talk about reishi mushroom for a long time, which is why I said if there are particular herbs you want me to talk about more extensively, then I can certainly do that in another video. All right, so other herbs that are really good for fibromyalgia pain or neuropathy pain include cayenne pepper. And cayenne pepper is hot. You get it in a powder form. The trick is to work with it so that you don't get it into your eyes, into your nostrils, that sort of thing. I'm glad that this is helping you, Rosanna. So stay tuned. I'm really glad that you're finding this information helpful. So one of the ways that people work with, hi Morris, good to see you. One of the ways that people work with cayenne pepper is in a form called capsaicin. You can take cayenne pepper capsules. You can also work with it in a patch, and you can buy the patch form at different pharmacies. I'm pretty sure it's just an over-the-counter item. You just go in and you look for capsaicin, and it's in a patch form. You can also find it in a cream form, and that's also really good in working with it in that way. Let me see if I'm missing anything. I also wrote down acupuncture. Now, I've never personally tried acupuncture for fibro or neuropathy pain, but I know other people that have done it and swear by it. So I'm just mentioning that to you just in case maybe you've tried it. If you have tried it, share that with me and just let me know how that went. Okay. So set that to the side for a minute. Other things that you may want to try is heat therapy. And heat therapy could include something as simple as taking a hot shower. It could also include something like using the hot hands or hot feet. And I was supposed to grab one because I do have some, but I forgot to get it. What I can do is just take a picture of it and post it in the comments. So these are little packets. They say hot hands on them. And usually during the winter time, I take one and I slide it into my gloves, and it warms up my hands really well. You can also take them and slide them into your shoes. You can take them and just maybe slide it into your pants, maybe a pocket, and it does warm up your body really, really well. So I can also show you where you can get that item from. I got mine, I think, from the Dollar Tree, because I was really surprised to see them there one day, and I picked up a few. But you can find them at any CVS, Walgreens, Walmart. Very easy to find them there. You can also try cold therapy. I know some people swear by, dunking into a really, really cold bath. Or one of the ways you can do it is alternating, which I've done, alternating from as you finish your hot shower, turn off the hot water and turn on the cold water, and just end your bath or your shower with 30 seconds of cold water. And that also helps. I've done that, and that also helps me. So you might want to try just the heat therapy on its own, cold therapy on its own, or you can do a combination of heat and cold. If you have any questions, again, please post them, because I can actually see some of the comments today. But if I miss something, then I will go back and I will answer that question in the comments, or I will answer them in another live. Sleep issues. If you're experiencing sleep issues, things you may want to try are melatonin. And other things you might want to try are chamomile tea, as well as lemon balm tea. You could also do a combination of chamomile and lemon balm. And I spoke about lemon balm a moment ago. That's a nervine. And chamomile is also very relaxing, and it's a really nice blend to have at the end of the day or you could probably start drinking it maybe around, I would say maybe around 3 o'clock, 3 to 4, and start drinking this tea. But you're going to want to stop at, before you go to bed, because you certainly don't want to be getting up throughout the night having to go and use the bathroom, because then that defeats the purpose of restorative sleep if you're waking up every few minutes to go and use the restroom, right? So another thing that you could try, right now I'm giving different suggestions of what you can try to alleviate some of the pain that you might be experiencing. Hi, Ali from Bangladesh. Oh, wow. Good to see you. All right, so another thing you can try is just gentle stretching. You don't want to stretch too much, because you certainly don't want to break anything or tear any ligaments, that sort of thing. And you want to tailor it to your specific needs. You could also work with if you do get to go to the gym, you could work with someone at the gym to help you to tailor some particular stretches to what you might need. Food. I'm going to be talking about food extensively. So let's jump into that, shall we? All right. So yesterday I talked a little bit about how you can find out the foods that are good for you, foods that are not good for you, simply by taking what's called a Dosha test. And the Dosha test is an Ayurvedic body type test. So if you weren't here yesterday, simply look up Dosha test. It's DOSHA. And that will give you an idea of what your body type is, and it also will tell you what types of foods you should be eating for your particular body type and what kind of foods you should be avoiding. It also will tell you the foods to eat during a particular season of the year. Because just because a particular food is available all year doesn't necessarily mean it's something you should be eating all year long, okay? So, vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the critical vitamins that everyone should be taking. But a lot of the times, if you've been diagnosed with lupus, with fibro, with neuropathy, there are two vitamins that usually they find lacking in those people who have been diagnosed with those things. That's vitamin D and vitamin B12 especially, or a lot of the vitamin B. A lot of the different vitamin B complexes. So, foods to get vitamin D include sockeye salmon, eggs, and I'm speaking for those of you who are not vegetarians or vegans. So, sockeye salmon, eggs, orange juice that's been fortified with vitamin D, because you can get that now. And you can also simply go and sit in the sun. But one of the things with people who've been diagnosed with fibro and lupus and neuropathy, sitting in the sun is not something that is recommended, because it does, I think some people who've been diagnosed with these conditions tend to develop, I don't want to say an allergy, but they become insensitive to the sun rays and cannot be out there for the extended period of time recommended to be able to get enough vitamin D. So a lot of the time you have to get it from a supplement or from your foods. I personally take the prescription vitamin D once a week, which is 50,000 IUs of the vitamin D. If you're not able to go and sit in the sun, then you can certainly go and, if your vitamin D levels are low, if you haven't had them checked, go ahead and have them checked. And if they are low, then you can ask for the vitamin D prescription. And that way you do not have to go and sit in the sun. Although I do recommend, getting into nature at least for 20 minutes a day. That is definitely helpful. So I did mention magnesium. Let me put that to the side. I have a lot of notes. I did mention magnesium and how you can get magnesium from simply taking an Epsom salt bath. You can also get magnesium from foods, and you can also take supplements. Foods that are rich in vitamin D are your dark leafy greens like kale, spinach, Swiss chard, collard greens. You can also get magnesium from beans, from lentils, nuts like almonds, pumpkin seeds, avocados, bananas, dark chocolate. And I mentioned salmon before, but other fatty fish include mackerel and herring. From salmon, you also get your omega-3 fatty acids. And for that, you want to make sure that it's wild-caught salmon. You can also get omega-3s from walnuts, from flaxseed, and chia seeds. I'm also going to talk about certain things that I want you to avoid. And this just happened to pop in on my notes here, so I'm going to mention it so I don't forget. Artificial sweeteners like, I think it's pronounced aspartame or aspartame, I'm not sure the pronunciation, but if you're using it, you know what I'm talking about. You probably heard about it. You want to avoid aspartame or aspartame, because that can actually activate a particular receptor called glutamate that exists in your nerve cells that's implicated in fibromyalgia. So if you are taking or you are using aspartame or aspartame, depending on the pronunciation, if you're using that as an artificial sweetener, you might want to try to transition to something else, or just basically use regular brown sugar or honey or agave syrup. But because the aspartame might actually be a trigger for you. Um, okay, foods that are rich in antioxidants, which really good benefit for people who have been diagnosed with fibro. Variety of fruits and vegetables. These include berries, sweet peppers, carrots, beets, and I mentioned spinach and kale before. There are things I want to mention about, certain things I want you to avoid, but let me make sure that I haven't missed some of the other things I wanted to share as far as what you should be taking. I did have a lot of notes. All right, so let me go ahead since it's actually followed right on here. Things that you should avoid. Artificial sweeteners, which I just mentioned, like aspartame, because this can actually increase your sensitivity to pain. So just use your regular honey, or you can use brown sugar, or agave syrup is another one that I mentioned. Stevia is also another really good one, and that tends to be the one that I use. I also use brown sugar, and I also use honey. You want to avoid MSG, or monosodium glutamate. That can cause swelling, and it can also aggravate pain. And we know that if you eat a lot of Chinese food, that tends to have a lot of MSG in it. When you go to, if you buy like packaged or prepackaged foods, that can also have a lot of MSG in it. So you want to start checking your labels. And yesterday, I think I mentioned in that video, start journaling the different type of foods you eat, or keeping a food journal. That's what I need to say. Start keeping a food journal and start documenting what you eat on a daily basis and how that particular food makes you feel. If it makes you feel good, there's no pain or any kind of inflammation that comes up in a couple of hours, then you know that's a good food for you. If you eat certain things and it creates like bloating and just an uneasy feeling, maybe your joints get really stiff afterwards, then you know that that particular food is triggering inflammation in you, right? So you want to make sure that you avoid those particular, avoid MSG simply by checking your packaging to, if you do buy prepackaged foods, to make sure that it's not an ingredient. You also want to avoid caffeine as much as possible. I know that that's the hardest thing to avoid because, some of us can't function without coffee or tea, and there are some teas that are high in caffeine. Soda is also high. Some sodas are high in caffeine, so you want to make sure that you avoid drinking too much soda. I personally don't drink soda, so and I know there are a lot of people out there as well who have cut soda out of their diet. Chocolate can also contain a lot of caffeine. If you do have to eat your chocolate, try dark chocolate. Diet pills, if you do take diet pills, that can also contain a lot of caffeine, which can trigger fibromyalgia symptoms. And processed food, try to eat, and this is one of the things I always say, try to eat as whole foods as possible. I do understand, especially with what's going on in the world today, it's kind of hard to keep fresh fruits and vegetables here all the time without having to go out on a daily basis to purchase these items, right? But try to limit your intake of processed foods. And another things I suggest that you avoid are refined carbohydrates. And these include things like pastries, cookies, white bread. And you're probably looking at me like, are you serious? But these are not good for your blood sugar, because your blood sugar, what it does, it tends to spike your blood sugar, and then it drops your blood sugar really, really quickly, causing you to crash. And that kind of fluctuation in your blood sugar can actually cause fibro flares, right? So you want to choose whole wheat or maybe ancient grains. There are quite a few breads out there that are absolutely delicious and are made from multigrains. And I think there's a particular brand called Ancient Grains that you might want to try out instead. You want to avoid unhealthy fats. Things like fried foods, limit how much fried foods you eat. You want to limit donuts, because those are fried, unless you can actually find people that bake donuts, but because I know they do exist. You want to avoid too much cookies, crackers, pizza. So these are the type of things that might have been made with unhealthy fats. So you want to avoid you eating. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love pizza. I've actually cut out cheese from my diet though, so I make my own now because I'm working with like vegan cheese. So, but I understand that it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be an easy route. So I'm not asking you to kind of throw everything out all at once. You can certainly start with, maybe you want to limit your fried foods. So if you do eat them on a regular basis, limit that to maybe 1 or 2 days a week, right? If you eat pizza, again, limit. Moderation is what I'm referring to here. I'm not telling you to go out and just take all of this stuff out of your diet. Do keep a food journal, because this will definitely help to tell you what's good for your body and what's not. What's good for you, what doesn't cause a flare-up in you, may cause a flare-up in me, may cause a flare-up in someone else. So like I said at the beginning, every person is different, and foods react differently to different people, right? So the oils that you want to avoid, when I mention unhealthy fats, these are things like peanut oil, safflower oil, corn oil. Those are the type of things that you may want to avoid. Oils that you might want to use instead include olive oil, coconut oil. Those are the two that are actually my favorite. You want to avoid alcohol, because what alcohol does, it actually dehydrates your body and it makes your muscles weak. So you want to avoid, now if you, again, moderation, because you're probably looking at me and getting ready to strangle me, because I'm basically telling you that you need to erase all of these things from your diet. But if you can't take them out, simply know what your limits are and work with your limits. I'm not telling you that you cannot drink alcohol again whatsoever, ever. So just work with it in moderation, and that goes for everything else. Simply because I say, okay, avoid refined carbs, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up on eating your pastries or your donuts, whatever the case is, because I can tell you I love the occasional donut. I know which particular donuts are good for me. I personally like the Dunkin' Donuts, but if I ate Krispy Kreme, that's a whole other story. I would, all kinds of things happen to me when I eat a Krispy Kreme donut. But I know some people love Krispy Kreme and it does nothing for them. So, it doesn't cause them any kind of issues. So you have to know your body. I'm simply giving suggestions. You have to know your body, because each person is different from the other. Even if you've been diagnosed with fibro and the other person over here has been diagnosed with fibro, the symptoms are different, the triggers are going to be different, and how foods interact with the body is going to be different. So, all right, so here's the other thing I wanted to talk about. If you're on meds, if you do take pharmaceutical medications, and you also drink alcohol, you have to remember that sometimes alcohol can also interfere with your medication. So that's another reason why you should limit your intake of alcohol, especially if you've been diagnosed with fibro and you're taking certain pharmaceutical meds for it. You do want to limit your intake of alcohol, because they can counteract, and they can also cause really bad side effects in your body. Now, I'm going to mention one other thing, which I know is huge for a lot of people, whether you've been diagnosed with fibro, with lupus, or not. That's gluten. I recommended wheat earlier, but wheat can also trigger fibromyalgia symptoms in people. So if you can erase gluten from your diet, that's the best thing. If you've been diagnosed with celiac disease, any kind of IBS issues, any kind of gastrointestinal issues, chances are gluten might have been a cause of what was happening. I found that gluten-free breads, gluten-free flours, those do not affect my stomach. But if I add just a regular piece of bread that does have gluten in it, it will. I get bloated. I get stomach pains. So, and I was never allergic to I never had a gluten intolerance before, but I realized this after I got diagnosed with lupus and fibro and a few other things, that when I started to eat the bread that did have gluten, and I didn't even realize, I think it took me a couple of years before I realized that there was something in certain breads that did trigger symptoms in me. So when I started to remove gluten, or the breads that had gluten in it, started to eat gluten-free breads, and I realized that I was feeling so much better. I found out that was a trigger. So for you, gluten might not be a trigger. It might be. Again, start to keep a food journal and start to document how you feel after eating certain types of breads. And right now it's a good time. You can experiment. Red dye number 40 and I know that red dye for me, actually any kind of artificial coloring in foods does trigger for me too, Rosanna. So yes, I completely understand. So I try to avoid things that have any kind of artificial color in them, because I know that certain ones are going to affect me, just like the red dye number 40 does for you, and gluten as well. So that's what I started to do, was buy gluten-free breads. And if I did eat pizza, I had to use gluten-free flours for the crust, or if I ordered pizza, it had to be with a gluten-free crust as well. There are lots of gluten-free options that you can, I know that Whole Foods, Earth Fare carried a lot of gluten-free products, but I think they're going out of business, and I think they've closed their doors after 40 years in operation. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to find an Earth Fare anymore, but Whole Foods definitely. Publix, I know, does carry a lot of gluten-free products, and Walmart certainly is expanding their lines as far as the gluten-free products are concerned. And if you do have celiac, I know that this can also overlap with fibro. So if you have gastrointestinal issues, you've never been diagnosed with fibro, you've never been diagnosed with celiac, I would certainly go ahead and get checked, because there could be something going on in there as well. But definitely, I cannot stress enough the importance of keeping a food journal if you're experiencing any kind of symptoms related to fibro, because it definitely does help you to know what foods are good for you and what foods are triggers for you. Dairy. I cannot have any dairy products, and mozzarella cheese was my weakness. I've had to give that up completely. I've given up all dairy, because I know that lactose intolerance is huge for a lot of people. So one of the things that I've done is I usually just drink almond milk. I drink a lot of coconut milk as well. So those might be two types of milk that you might want to consider. If dairy milk is a trigger for you, you can also consider goat milk. What's another one? Or any kind of nut milk, like I mentioned, the almond milk. Soy milk is also an option that you might want to try. Certainly, again, journal and see which of if you do switch to a nut milk, see which of these, especially if you have any kind of nut allergy, you might not want to be drinking a nut milk, so you might want to try like goat's milk. But if dairy is an issue for you, start to document the particular nut milk that you might try, see how that affects your body, write it in there. It does take some work to get from, having flare-ups to having no flare-ups. It does take some work in between, and journaling is definitely one of the ways that you can certainly figure out which foods are triggers and which foods are actually good for you energetically, right? And I think I got that one. Let me just make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the essential oils, because it's not just foods that I've worked with. I've worked with herbs, I've worked with essential oils, as well as food. So I'm going to mention a few of the essential oils, and I'm going to share with you an oil that I actually created years back when I was first diagnosed with fibro and neuropathy. So I'm going to share that with you, and I'm going to tell you the oils that are in there, and I'm also going to share with you where you can purchase these particular essential oils if you want to try to make a blend for yourself. Lavender essential oil is great for a lot of things, but especially for pain. It's very calming as well. So if you're going through a lot of stress, you might want to diffuse a little bit of lavender essential oil, or even just place it on your wrist, rub together, just inhale. Lavender is very calming. Peppermint essential oil is great, especially if you have headaches. Simply taking a few drops of the essential oil and rub it at the back of your neck. Just massage it in, and in a few minutes you should feel your headache diminishing, if it doesn't go away altogether. So it's great for that. It's also great for mental stimulation. If you are having trouble focusing, peppermint oil is a great oil for that. Sandalwood essential oil is great if you're having trouble sleeping. So you might want to use diffuse some sandalwood essential oil late in the evening, so that it's a sedative, or a type of sedating essential oil. So late in the evening is when you might want to diffuse some, and that will also to help you with your sleep. Eucalyptus essential oil is a great anti-inflammatory, so you can work with that in your joints, anywhere that you may have any kind of pain. You can also blend it with peppermint and with lavender to make a blend that way as well. Nutmeg essential oil is great for pain. You can also, I'm sure a lot of you might even cook with nutmeg, but nutmeg essential oil is great for pain, is great for swelling, helps to alleviate the swelling, and it's also great for cognitive function. So you might want to blend a little bit of the nutmeg with some of the peppermint essential oil, and that will help, and even with lavender, that will help with focus, concentration. You can also add in a little bit of basil, because basil is also great for focus and concentration, as well as rosemary, which I mentioned earlier. Ginger essential oil, the herb itself is also great if you cook with it. I cook a lot with ginger. I also do I don't want to say candied ginger, but it's the preserved ginger, and I eat that. You can also eat the raw ginger, that you get the benefits from that as well. But the ginger essential oil, I've used that whenever I have maybe any kind of bloating issues, and I simply take it and rub it over my tummy. And if you have any kind of issues with gas, it's going to alleviate that really quickly. But if you have any kind of bloating concerns, or pain in your stomach area, the ginger essential oil will help with that. It also helps with joint pain. And one of the blends that I used, it's actually a capsule. I don't have it here. I can talk about that in another video. It contains frankincense, turmeric, and ginger, and cayenne pepper. And it's in a powder form, and that is my anti-inflammatory blend. So I use that on a regular basis as well. The frankincense, we can talk about that in another video as well, because the frankincense essential oil as well as the resin, those are both great anti-inflammatories. Another oil called copaiba it's spelled Copaiba. Some people say copaiba, some people say copaiba, but that's also a great essential oil for alleviating pain, like the nerve pain. Other essential oils that are great, or actually, let me mention these as some herbs. There's white willow bark. Another one is called devil's claw. Turmeric, which I mentioned just now as well. Ginger, which I also mentioned. Lavender, I mentioned the lavender essential oil, but the lavender itself, the lavender flowers are also great. If you make a lemonade with this, so amazing, so good. But I also put the lavender in with Epsom salt baths. You can add it to the rosemary and the stinging nettles that I mentioned earlier, and just relax in a nice bath. So I mentioned lavender. Black cohosh is another herb that's really good, or also being researched for fibromyalgia, as a fibromyalgia remedy. Black cohosh is also really good if you're going through menopause. And if you're going through menopause and you're finding that you're having a lot of flare-ups with fibro, that might be why. So black cohosh may be something that you'd want to integrate into one of your healing protocol. Milk thistle is also another really good herb for neuropathy and fibromyalgia flare-ups. And I'm mentioning neuropathy as well because those both have to do with the nerve pain. Okay, so let me go ahead and share with you the essential oil blend that I made. And this one was actually created for nerve and joint pain, because at the time I was going through both, and there were some essential oils that are good for both the nerve pain as well as joint pain. So the blend that I made here is for both. So let me tell you what is in it. I mentioned chamomile before, the herb. The chamomile essential oil is also in here. There is lemongrass essential oil, marjoram, and these are all essential oils. Marjoram, clove, and I'm going to stop here at clove. If you've ever had a toothache, and actually one of the old remedies for toothache was simply taking some clove powder and putting it into the tooth that aches, and it acts as an instant anesthetic. Right, so it takes the pain away immediately. Clove, I've also added clove essential oil into a mouthwash. I used to have a lot of sores that would pop up inside of my mouth due to lupus whenever I had a lupus flare-up. I haven't had those in years. But the blend the mouthwash that I made had clove essential oil in it as well, and that definitely helps. But it's also really great for joint pain anywhere. So that is why I placed it in this blend. Also in this blend is peppermint, which I mentioned earlier for the headaches. There's another herb an oil in here called ylang ylang. There's also wintergreen, which is a very powerful pain essential oil for pain. Some people are allergic to wintergreen, so you're going to want to test yourself first before you use the wintergreen on yourself. And the other essential oil in here is lavender. So we have, I'm going to go through them again: chamomile, lemongrass, marjoram, clove, peppermint, ylang ylang, wintergreen, and lavender. And you can certainly also add in a few of the other essential oils that I might have mentioned earlier in the video. There are three items that I use in some form daily, and that is CBD. So let me check this. So true about clove for toothache. Actually, I mix the clove essential oil in with the coconut oil and just swish that around in my mouth, and then you spit it out afterwards, and it kind of it heals as well as numbs the pain for a little while. So you're definitely right about the coconut oil, Rosanna. But here's one that I did not mention: CBD oil. You can add uh, one works, one works if the other won't, right? Um, CBD oil is something I use on a regular basis, and these are drops. It's in a droplet form, and I take 10 drops under my tongue. And I'll tell you where you can purchase this. You can certainly go online and find different places that where you can get the CBD oil from as well. And CBD oil is the legal version. This is, I'm not selling you cannabis or anything here. CBD oil is legal in all states. This is a CBD pain relief, which is CBD mixed in with a few other things, and this is a roller. This has a roller bottle on it, so all I do is I simply take it and just roll it onto the area that might be hurting. I also have a CBD salve, and let me show you where, and that's what it looks like. And you can see there's a lot big on. What I do is I actually use this as chapstick, and if I have any kind of I have a crown on this side where I tend to, it's an old crown, it's cracked, so when all of this chaos is over, I'm actually heading to the dentist to get that one fixed. Occasionally it does hurt, especially if I bite down on it, so I use this CBD salve, and I take a little bit out and I actually just rub it along the side of my cheek, and it immediately takes the pain away. The same can be done with the clove essential oil. If I took the clove essential oil and just put a drop into the cracked crown, not only is the clove not only is it anti-inflammatory, it's also antiseptic. So it helps to kill whatever bacteria might be building up. You can see that there are a lot of benefits, not just for pain, but a lot of the essential oils that I'm sharing with you have more than one particular benefit. Okay, so let me make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. All right, so some unconventional methods. I did mention that I was going to share a few of those with you. In addition to the herbs, the food, the essential oils, there are a few other things that you can try. And if you have tried these before, please share that with me. I would love to know how it worked for you. And other people who are watching might want to hear about your experience as well. So I would love for you to share that in the comments below. One of those unconventional methods is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I'm going to just let you go down the rabbit hole with this one. It's transcranial magnetic stimulation. So do a little bit of research on that, see if it's something that appeals to you, and if that might possibly help you to alleviate some of your symptoms. Another one, and by the way, that has been approved by the FDA to work for depression. So if you're experiencing depression as well, with all of the fibro symptoms, you might want to look into transcranial magnetic stimulation. The other one that you might want to try is biofeedback therapy. And again, I'm just mentioning these for you to kind of do a little bit of research on for yourself. The other one, that one is biofeedback therapy. And the last one I want to mention is Reiki. And that's spelled R-E-I-K-I. And Reiki is basically where you're working with energy. You can do Reiki on yourself. You can have someone do Reiki for you. And it's one of those that can be done in person, or it can actually be done at a distance as well, which is why I want you to do a little bit of research on there, because it's not, just do a little bit of research on there, and let me know if that is something that you're interested in. Let me know if it's something that appeals to you. Just let me know if it's something that's a little bit too woo-woo for you, because I know that it can be. That is fine. That's why I mentioned all of the other things as well. One thing I did want to mention that I forgot to mention was, let me just have a sip because my throat is getting dry here. This is actually kombucha. It is raspberry kombucha, which is a fermented drink. It's really good for your digestive system, really good for the immune system. So that's why I had that there. I forgot to mention two things that would kind of help to alleviate some of the symptoms as they flare up. Sleeping with a weighted blanket, and you can do your research into, there's so many different kinds of weighted blankets out there. That is one of the things that helped me, especially at night. During the day, if you are just kind of curling up, on the couch watching a show or something, or if you just have like a panic attack, it's good to have a weighted blanket. It does help with that. At nighttime, if you're when you're trying to sleep and you might have spasms that are happening, maybe you have restless legs, the weighted blanket will also help with that because it kind of cuddles you. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can imagine being hugged by this weighted blanket. So definitely look into weighted blankets as something that could possibly help you. Another thing that this is one of the avoids, and this is personally for me and my family. It might help you, it may not, and that is avoiding toothpaste that has fluoride in it. Fluoride can be a trigger for fibro concerns, so you may not know that you're being triggered by fluoride. The only way to know is if you switch to a non-fluoride toothpaste. One of the things that and again, I should have brought my toothpaste. I use charcoal infused toothpaste. I actually started making my own, and then I found some that I decided to try, and Dollar Tree carries a really good charcoal toothpaste that you might want to check out. It's only $1 and it's a very good size. So you might want to check out the charcoal toothpaste, or just any toothpaste that does not have fluoride in it, because fluoride has been linked to so many other concerns, and I won't go into that in detail here, but you can certainly do your research on your own to find out the concerns with fluoride. All right, so just want to make sure that I'm sharing everything that I wanted to share, because I just kind of I wrote down. All right, I'm going to be sharing some places that you can get these items from, but let me share with you some other things that I have. I'm going to share with you a tea blend that I created, which I know you're going to love because it is so good. I call it the Dare Me Relax. You can call it the Dare Me Take a Chill Pill, Dare Me Chill Out, or whatever it is, but I call it Dare Me Relax Tea Blend. And so you definitely look for the charcoal toothpaste there. You may also want to check out Rosanna, check out essential oils, because they do carry essential oils now. And there's one, there's a tea tree. They do have one for pain, and I think they have one for relaxation. So you might want to check out the health and beauty aisle to see if your particular Dollar Tree does carry those essential oils. Okay. And it's a great way for you to start off using them. I've actually tested them out, so I know that they're quality and they do work. So you might want to, rather than investing in large quantities, this might be a good way for you to just try them out. All right, so let me just take another sip. Here is the blend for the Dare Me Relax Tea Blend. 3 parts of lemon balm, and I spoke about lemon balm earlier in the video. Lemon balm is very calming. It helps to relieve nervous exhaustion as well. So, it's a nervine herb, so it definitely is going to help with neuropathy symptoms or with fibromyalgia symptoms. So 3 parts of lemon balm, 2 parts of hibiscus flower. Let me just go through the whole list, and then I talk about the benefits, so you get the list. 3 parts of lemon balm, 2 parts of hibiscus flowers. If you're from the Caribbean, it's called sorrel, or Jamaica flowers, or Jamaica flowers if you're in Mexico. or flor de Jamaica, I think if you're in Mexico. 2 parts of chamomile flowers, 2 parts of rose petals, a 1/4 part rose hips, and an 1/8 part of lavender. So I mentioned parts. You can make this in bulk, or you can make this a cup at a time. So parts, it could be, if you want to make it in bulk, you could do 3 cups of lemon balm, 2 cups of hibiscus flowers, 2 cups of chamomile, 2 cups of rose petals, a 1/4 cup of rose hips, and an 1/8 cup of lavender, right? So whatever part you put in, that's the part you're going to keep going down. So if you use tablespoons, then it's 3 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons, and so forth. So hibiscus flowers is loaded with vitamin C. Really, really high in vitamin C, and it's also really good for alleviating blood pressure. So it helps with stress, definitely, and bringing your blood pressure down. Chamomile is a nervine. It's going to help to kind of relax you, calm you down. Rose petals, high in vitamin C, high in calcium, high in iron. Rose hips, again, high in vitamin C. Lavender is a natural antidepressant, so it's going to relax you and calm you. So you can see how all of the different herbs have been chosen for their specific benefit, and how it's going to impact the nervous system, because that's what, when it comes to fibro and neuropathy, that's what you want to target, right? So again, that's 3 parts lemon balm, 2 parts hibiscus flowers, 2 parts chamomile, 2 parts rose petals, 1/4 part rose hips, and an 1/8 part of lavender. The other one that I wanted to share with you, and I'll tell you where I got these from, is the neuropathy blend, but it's in a capsule form. All right, and this particular neuropathy blend has cayenne pepper, white ginseng, ginger root, which I mentioned before as well, ginkgo biloba, hawthorn berry. Now, what are the benefits? Cayenne pepper, we talked about, it's a great anti-inflammatory. Let me see if I can just take out one of the so I would take 2 of these daily. So the cayenne pepper, relieves pain. White ginseng also relieves pain, but it's also really good for sleep. It helps you to, if you have any kind of sleep issues, it does help with that. Ginger root is a great anti-inflammatory, but it's also good for the digestive system. Ginkgo biloba is great for the cardiovascular system, and it's one of those herbs that's really good as well for neuropathy pain. So you can see why it's in here. Hawthorn berry is really good for the circulatory system. So you can see why that's in here. The hawthorn berry is also in my, I have a circulation blend. So the hawthorn berry is also in that. Hawthorn berry is also really good if you have chronic fatigue, and it's a natural beta blocker. So you can see why this particular blend is really good for neuropathy pain. And I will go ahead and type this in the comments below, so if you want to try making this, but I'll also tell you where you can get this from. This was made by a company called Mrs. Mango and Company. It's located in Rockledge, Florida, and I can post the website, so you can actually go on and you can order the neuropathy blend for yourself. You can also find the phone number there, and you can call and have them make it for you, and they can ship it to you. I don't get any kind of commissions from these people. Let me just put that out there. I mentioned Mrs. Mango before because that is the herbal store that I collapsed in, that ended up putting me into the emergency room and putting me on my path to herbal healing, because Mrs. Mango was the place that I went to when I got to the end of my rope and I was tired of taking so many pharmaceutical medications. I found Mrs. Mango. So I'll post her information in the comment section below so that you can go there if you're so inclined. I will also post some websites like Mountain Rose Herbs, very reputable company for herbs as well as essential oils. I'll also post a link to Eden's Garden, which is a great essential oil company. So you can go there, and you might want to watch this video a second time just to kind of jot down some of the essential oils that I mentioned. And you might also even be able to find a few blends there that will that you might want to try. Okay, so Eden's Garden, I will post the link. Mountain Rose Herbs and Mrs. Mango, I will post those. And like I said, I do not get any kind of commission from them. These are just places that I've tried that are reputable. And Mrs. Mango, I credit Mrs. Mango's herbal company with saving my life, and God above, obviously, but yes. So that's the only reason why I am sharing these with you, okay? I believe that might be everything. Oh no, I did forget something. Let me find it, because I did want to talk about exercise a little bit. A lot of people who have fibro flare-ups or have lupus flare-ups or neuropathy flare-ups, you do find it hard to exercise, and you're probably thinking, when I'm in pain, it's the last thing I want to do is exercise. But moving actually helps to alleviate the pain. So no, you're not going to go out and run a marathon. You're not even going to, run 2 miles or a mile. Maybe just a simple walk will help. Other things I want to recommend is doing something like Qigong or Tai Chi. These actually work on your energetic field. It's kind of hard to explain, but just the light movements, getting your energy moving, will help to alleviate the pain that you might be experiencing. Yoga. Now, you don't have to do extreme yoga. Just basic yoga movements will also help with alleviating any kind of fibromyalgia symptoms that you might be experiencing. A couple of the things that I've done over the last few months was Qigong. I've trained in the martial arts for years. I'm actually a second-degree black belt, but I got to a point where I got so sick I couldn't train anymore, and I was devastated because this was about 7-8 years ago. I found that sudden movements got me really dizzy, and I ended up passing out on the mat more times than I really wanted to, So I ended up having to quit training in the martial arts, in karate. And what happened was, years later, I managed to start back training again, but I started researching into Tai Chi and researching Qigong, and found that Qigong really does help me. I don't have to do any extensive movements like, in karate. I still do a little bit, but I found that I love Qigong so much that I've been doing that a lot more. So you might want to look into things like Qigong and Tai Chi and yoga, and see if any of those will help you. One of the things I do recommend, there's a lady, she has lots of YouTube videos as well, so you can check her out on YouTube. And you can also look on YouTube for any kind of information related to some of the stuff I've talked about. Donna Eden, she has a 5-minute routine that I've done on a regular basis, and that also helps to alleviate some of the benefit from mentioning. I'm just sharing with you things that I've worked with, that a little bit of technical issues when I'm back. All right, so Donna Eden was the name, so check her out on YouTube and see if there's anything there that that might help you out as well. I've thrown a lot at you today. I know it's a lot. The video will be here if you want to watch it more than once. I will not take the video down. If you have questions, please feel free to post them in the comment section below. Share them with me, and I can answer them either in the comments, or I will come live and I will answer them live for you in that manner. If there's anything that I might have missed, because like I said, I had so many things I wanted to talk about, but I think I've gone through everything. Then, but if there's something that I missed, I will certainly, come back on and I can talk about it in the next live. Again, I do appreciate you being here. I know some of you were here for the entire period. If you have questions about any of the herbs or essential oils or anything that I've mentioned here, please just post it in the comments. I'll respond to them as quickly as I can. But please do some research on your own about some of the things that I mentioned as well, because I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm sharing with you things that have helped me, but I also want you to, dive down the proverbial rabbit hole and do some research for yourself and find out if number one, if what I said is true, and number two, see if it's something that you want to try for yourself. All right? Again, I appreciate you being here with me. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I will see you again tomorrow. And today, if I didn't mention it, today was day 28 of Create with Gina, day 28. I will be back tomorrow, God's willing, for day 29. And again, keep in mind different topics that you might want me to talk about. Post those in the comments below, because the one today was actually one that was requested yesterday. So if you'd like for me to continue this and there's certain things that you want me to talk about, just simply post them in the comments. You can do it now. Yes, I will definitely post those links for you, Rosanna. I won't forget. I will post those as soon as I get off here, okay? So thank you again for being here, and I will see you all again tomorrow.